Okay, good evening. It is 5:30 on Tuesday, October 26th. We're going to go ahead and get our public meeting started. May I ask for a roll call to establish quorum, please?
Yes. Dr. Gravosha?
Here.
Miss Luna Rose?
Here.
Miss Shaw?
Here.
Miss Counts?
Here.
Miss Grijalva?
Here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so we have a quorum. I'd like to go ahead and start with land acknowledgements. There he is. Juan Jimenez? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Juan. Juan is a ninth grader at Palo Verde High School. Juan is a member of the Salt Seat Marie Tribe, Chippewa Indians. Being a gifted student, he's in 4 advanced placement courses and hopes his academic success will take him to the University of Oregon to obtain a degree in environmental sciences. Outside of his academic achievements, Juan is also treasurer for the school baseball team, as well as the Gender and Sexuality Alliance Club. Outside of school, Juan is an avid reader and enjoys listening to music. Thank you for being here with us, Juan. Could you, can we bring up the land acknowledgement so Juan can read it for us, please? Can you see that, Juan?
Yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. On behalf of the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Juan Jimenez, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pascua Yaqui tribe.
Thank you very much, Juan, for joining us. Now we're on to Pledge of Allegiance, and we have Marcus Carpenter. He's in 5th grade at Hudlow Elementary, and I see Marcus. There you are. Hi, Marcus. Marcus is a great role model to our young Hawks. Marcus is a kind, gentle soul that has great supportive parents. He is a great student with high expectations for himself and others. He is a great friend to his peers at Hudlow. We can always count on Marcus to demonstrate responsibility and respect towards others. Well, thank you for being with us today, Marcus. Can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and bring up the flag and ask those that can, please stand. And whenever you're ready, Marcus.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So we are on to call to the audience.
Agenda adjustment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Agenda adjustments. I apologize.
Yeah, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, I've got 4 recommendations this evening. I'd like to request that items 8.1, 9.1, 8.3, and 8.2 be moved up in this order immediately following the call to the audience.
Okay, can you repeat that for me, please?
8.1, 9.1, 8.3, 8.2.
Okay. Thank you. Any other requests, any concerns, board members, about making those adjustments? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we will make those adjustments. And now we're on to, there's a little, I don't know what's going on here with the guidelines to address the board in 2.4 on the agenda. And then it says awards and recognition, and then call to the audience. So that's why I went to that, just FYI. All right, so we're on to 3 awards and recognitions. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, and those of you in the viewing public, welcome to our final governing board meeting here in the month of October. We certainly hope everybody out there, students and staff and parents, had a restful fall break. Our first recognition comes off of the heels of a wonderful event last week on Friday, where we had the opportunity not only to honor and memorialize the commitment to this community of Ray Davies, but also the opportunity to celebrate a young lady at Mansfeld for her impressive leadership. Let me just pull up my notes here. Congratulations to Anisette Rivera from Mansfeld Middle School. She received the Ray Davies Humanitarian Award from the Educational Enrichment Foundation every year. The Educational Enrichment Foundation holds a luncheon in honor of pioneer Holocaust educator Ray Davies. He is one of the original authors of the Holocaust curriculum in the Tucson Unified School District, and every year at that luncheon, a student is awarded the Humanitarian Award in his honor. So I want to congratulate Anisette for her selflessness and her leadership out there at Mansfeld. She had an opportunity to join us at that lunch and to be recognized. So check out all the great photos of Anisette and her award on our social media platforms. Our next recognition, we are home to the proud recipient of the 2021 Athlete of the Year, the Phoenix chapter of the National Alliance of the African American Athlete. Palo Verde High School senior Lee Barber was recognized as one of the 2021 Athletes of the Year from the Phoenix chapter of the National Alliance of African American Athletes. Founded in 2005, the Phoenix chapter of the National Alliance of African American Athletes promotes academic excellence, community service, and social consciousness. Every year, a statewide search is done for premier African American male scholar athletes, grades 7 through 12, who have a 3.8 GPI or higher, do community service, and have high level of athletic skills. Lee was acknowledged for his 3.4 GPA and his talents in both basketball and track and field, but most importantly, for his commitment to his education and community. Congratulations, Lee. As we come to the end of Mes de la Cultura here in the Tucson Unified School Districts, we want to recognize those students in grades K through 12 that were invited to participate in the annual Mes de la Cultura Art Contest, highlighting original artwork that embraces Mexican American Latinx Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th. Students and their teachers submitted wonderful art pieces centered on the themes of the contest, strengths of the Mexican American Latinx culture and our community, or how they honor Mexican American Latinx heritage. In partnership with the University of Arizona's Guerrero Student Center and Arizona Athletics, winners in 4 grade level categories were honored during halftime at the Hispanic Heritage football game, along with their family members. Congratulations, our K2 winner, Charlotte Johnson from Monzo. Our 3rd through 5th grade winner is Penelope Torres from Drackman K8. And our 6th through 8th grade winner is Isabella Marty from Mansfeld Middle School. And our 9th through 12th grade winner is 9th grader Miranda America Carter from University High School. We want to congratulate all of our amazing winners for the beautiful art that they created in honor of Mes de la Cultura. And we have got some middle school champions in the house. Congratulations to the boys basketball team at Gridley. They won the district middle school basketball tournament. Kudos out to the young men of the Gridley Grizzlies basketball team for winning this year's district middle school basketball tournament and championship. Our next recognition, our next set of champions comes from Doolin. The Doolin girls volleyball champions. Congratulations to the girls volleyball team out there at Doolin. They won the district middle school volleyball tournament. Congratulations, Doolin. We've got more champions to celebrate, this time out at Dodge. Congrats to the girls cross country team at Dodge Middle School. They won the district middle school cross country tournament. And on the boys side of the house, another championship for boys cross country out there at Gridley. This team has been dominant, winning several district championships over the last 4 or 5 years. This year, no exception. So congratulations to all of our boys cross country team members out there at Gridley Middle School. And it is my honor, my pleasure, to celebrate a very, very special achievement by one of the district's most distinguished leaders at any grade level. And I'm talking about Principal Mary Anderson of the Fruit Tendler Firebirds. Miss Anderson has long distinguished herself as a leader amongst leaders, a commitment to excellence, a commitment to children, a commitment to literacy, a commitment to service of her employees and the fruit tender community. We are no strangers to this dedication. But for the first time, Miss Anderson is finally being recognized on a national level, and this thrills us to no end. Miss Anderson, principal at Fruit Tendler Elementary School, received the Terrell H. Bell Award from the United States Department of Education. This award is given to only 8 outstanding leaders nationally who play a vital role in guiding students and schools to excellence, frequently under challenging circumstances. Principals that are chosen as Terrell H. Bell Award recipients have literally transformed their schools. Their vision, collaborative leadership styles have produced outstanding results for all of their students to develop academically, emotionally, physically, socially, and culturally. These principles have shown that with effective leadership, skilled teaching, and high expectations, all students can learn. Principals are nominated by their school communities during the final stages of the National Blue Ribbon School application process. The Bell Award honors Secretary Bell's memory and celebrates school leaders who are realizing his vision of excellent education for every student. Congratulations, Mrs. Anderson. I couldn't think of a finer leader, a better ambassador of the Tucson Unified School District and the Fruit Tender community to receive this distinguished award. Borton is the home of the Arizona Science Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, Madeline Shepard, third grade teacher at Borton, who was named the Arizona Science Teacher of the Year novice for the year 2021. She is an amazing teacher who inspires and engages students. We look forward to honoring her at the ASTA conference on November 5th at the Challenger Space Center. We had one of our teachers at Hollinger recognized as a Pima County Legendary Teacher of the Year. As part of the Pima County Legendary Teacher Initiative, Ms. Balavan, who is an incredible teacher, was recognized for her passion for teaching and her reflective approach to looking at achievement data at the classroom level is evident in her ability to build meaningful relationships with students and her families. She sets high expectations for not only academic growth, but also expects students to develop skills such as empathy and compassion. Her excellence is celebrated throughout TUSD and certainly in the Hollinger community. We have another award winner, another 6th grade science teacher, bringing home the Telemundo Heroína del Mes Hispano, Griselda Meraz, 6th grade teacher over at Hollinger. Hollinger distinguished again another faculty member awarded for their excellence. Ms. Griselda Meraz, 6th grade science teacher, was featured on Telemundo as the Heroína del Mes Hispano. I want to congratulate Ms. Meraz for everything that she does for her students in the service of the Hollinger community. And September 26th, I know we're a little bit late, but was Human Resources Professionals Day. Here at Tucson Unified, we recognize our human resources staff and thank them for all of their efforts. And last but not least, we have a very, very special recognition for a couple of school safety officers who went above and beyond the call of duty in their efforts to recover 21 laptops and 20 charging cords that were ditched in an empty field, and were able to recover them and bring them back to the district. They spoke with an initial caller, community member Janet Cordova, who stated that her father found the laptops while he was working at a job site. Janet's father, Mr. Jorge Quiroz Ballesteros, is a landscaper for Ventana Canyon Outdoor Living. At around 8 a.m., he arrived to the housing development Mesquite on Rosewater near Henry Elementary. And while he was working, he discovered in this field area laptops abandoned behind some bushes. There were 21 and 20 charging cords in a plastic box. Jorge gathered and secured all of the items and placed them in his work vehicle. He brought them to his residence and told his daughter Janet, who called school safety, and it was our team, Officer Soriano and Bejarano, who made it their mission to recover these laptops, knowing how badly our students need this resource in their classrooms and in remote learning situations. With an urgency and with a passion to serve, they quickly recovered the stolen laptops and chargers, and we were able to put them back out into circulation. So I want to thank both school safety officers on behalf of our administrative team for their service. Governing board members, that concludes our awards and recognitions for the evening.
Thank you. Board member activity reports. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Over the last couple of weeks, I had the opportunity to visit the three of the family resource centers, one at Menlo Park, Catalina, and then Palo Verde, where I was just amazed by all of the resources available to TUSD families, and really the entire community. Anyone who stops by is able to get some free resources, which include clothes, shoes, food, hygiene products, and more. And it was just great to see all of those. And I do want to mention to the public that if you have any items to donate, that they are accepting them all the time at the Family Resource Centers. I also had the opportunity to stop by the DAPE classrooms, which are now located at the Family Resource Centers, to see how the teachers and the students are faring over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Luna Rose?
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Yeah, this past Saturday, although it wasn't really a sanctioned TUSD event, I attended AIDS Walk at Miles, and it was put on by SAFE, and it's a wonderful event. We had, it was a really nice turnout, and I'm very pleased that TUSD is a part of working with the community like that and allowing events like that to be at our facilities. So hats off to the team, both at Miles and SAFE, for putting on such a wonderful event on Saturday morning.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Ravi?
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you, Ms. Luna Lowe's, for mentioning AIDS Walk. As the CEO of SAFE, I'm really proud that our development team was able to work really seamlessly with the TUSD facilities individuals to facilitate that relationship. Since the last report, I've been able to attend 2 meetings of the Budget Advisory Committee. If you remember, that's the committee that this governing body approved this past winter to help address 4 priority areas of the board, to look at budget implications, best practices, evidence, and other information to make recommendations to this governing body for the next budget and beyond. We've had 2 really, just really good meetings. I've been really happy with the progress of this committee. We were able to address classroom sizes and what recommendations they might have to put energy or not energy, and time and money into reducing classroom sizes, as well as starting the conversation on the minimum wage and compression within TUSD and how to stay competitive and within the budgetary constraints that we have. So really great conversations, and I want to thank all the amazing dozen members of the Budget Advisory Committee, as well as the staff that have really put a lot of time and energy into making it a success.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to participate in a couple of events. One of them was a tardeada for Dr. Valenzuela. They're raising funds to create a sculpture, and it's going to be beautiful, but they're raising funds in order to erect that. And I'm sure that the committee will be reaching out to TUSD to find out if, I think most appropriately, it should be at Davis. And so, figuring out where that placement should happen. I was happy to walk through Keene, a closed school of TUSD's, where Flowers and Bullets has done some amazing transformational work with Midtown Farms there. And so we were actually able to walk through the school. It was, I walked through with 3 former Keene students, and so they were able to say, this is where we hung out, and this is where the cafeteria was, and it's sad to go through closed schools, but some of the ideas that they have for transforming that space is is something that I'm looking forward to having a larger conversation with the community and with the board. I visited Shoemaker, and thank you to Reem Hewitt and Selena Robles for giving me a tour of the new PEEP programs. Those are the county-funded programs, the preschool programs. I also visited Kelland. What I was told by Reem and Selena is that we have a 700 child wait list, and the issue is not space, the issue is staffing. And so that is where it's frustrating, because usually it's we don't have the money to pay for staff, and really we're just desperately looking for staff. And so I'm looking forward to having a conversation here at the board level to discuss how we can incentivize, in general, filling a lot of these vacancies throughout the district, but to that one. I felt like Dr. Trujillo, we spent a lot of time together this month.
We did.
At different events, right?
We did,
We
yes.
were at the electric bus press conference and really pushing for electric buses and use of electric buses and how that negatively impacts predominantly our children of color in neighborhoods that have a lower socioeconomic status, because those are the students in general that are using our buses. And so all of those pollutants from our buses are in those neighborhoods more. We also were able to touch base with Secretary of Education Cordona at Hollinger. And then Dr. Trujillo was gracious enough to join me online as we spoke in Spanish with Dr. Garcia of Pima County and Paula Janko regarding vaccine hesitancy. And then I participated in our monthly, I'm part of the Pueblo High School Counseling Advisory Board, so I participated in that. Okay, I think, did anyone else have anything else to add? Okay, so we'll move on to call to the audience, and I'll go ahead and turn that over to Clerk Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. During the audience call, the board clerk will recognize speakers and maintain order by setting appropriate limitations. The governing board is committed to the safety of the entire TUSD community in order to observe the recommended safeguards for reducing the rate of spread of COVID-19. The following procedures related to the call to the audience portion of board meetings will be observed. All public comments for the meeting were accepted in written form. Public comments will be read into the record by the program coordinator of staff services to the governing board. Our staff will make sure each board member receives a copy. At the conclusion of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if individual board members wish to respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, wish to ask a staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. By law, at most 2 board members can address any single issue raised during the call to the audience. And our first letter is from Garrett Smith.
Greetings to USD board members. I sent this to you in emails to each of you also, but I wasn't sure which was the best method to reach out, so I chose both. But I am reaching out to highlight what is covered in the YouTube video I included regarding the health and developmental benefits of later school start times, and the main reason is due to the sleep habits most beneficial to young children are interrupted due to school starting too early. Before going further, I recognize a YouTube video may not be viewed as a credible source, but this particular well-known YouTube channel is an exception, as it cites sources and is very thorough, so I encourage you not to dismiss it. Since we all want what is best for children and their development, I suspect I am not the first person to bring up this topic. So my question is, what can we do about adjusting to later start times for the benefits of the community's children without much disruption to the immense logistical task of conducting a school? Thanks for your time. Beth Garrett.
Thank you. And the next letter is from Phillip Harvey.
Hello, my son is a student at a TUSD school, and I want you to understand that he would not be this year had our family been aware that the mask mandate would be enacted the day before school began. Unfortunately, as of today, we have no other options. But after this school year, our hope is to leave the district. It is appalling, to say the least, that this board is still not willing to address the public formally, instead choosing to broadcast their board meetings under the guise of a public emergency. When not only does the data show that you are able to conduct your meetings with the public safety. It seems obvious that the board is well aware, as you all have been photographed in public at largely populated events, without social distancing and, of course, without a mask. My question is, when looking at the data from around our country and the world, understanding that masks have no effect on the numbers regarding transmission or in preventing hospitalization, that children are by orders of magnitude far less likely to suffer serious side effects from COVID than, say, the flu. How do you wake up every morning and continue to put our children at risk and subject them to abuse with your mask mandate? My son has respiratory issues, as do many children in TUSD schools. A child passed out in class due to wearing the mask, not once but twice. Your school staff suffers as well and are seemingly unable to wear the mask themselves, as every time I visit the office, they hang off of their faces. Yet my child gets scolded for not wearing his mask by a teacher while trying to catch his breath after gym class. I believe every member of this board is at this point causing intentional and unnecessary harm to our children, and I believe the next step for us concerned parents, recently labeled domestic terrorists by the National School Board, a disgusting thought. It's time for us to consider bringing a lawsuit and seeking damages. This charade needs to stop, and many of us parents were afforded no time in which to react to this policy. End the mask mandate, or you will lose a large amount of students to private and charter schools and risk even further financial losses. It is my hope you are all voted out of office given our next opportunity to do so. As of October 25th, there are currently 25 pediatric COVID hospitalizations in the entire state of Arizona. That's 1.5 per 100,000. Banner has also changed the pediatric population data to include ages up to 25 years of age. This mandate and any vaccine mandates are absurd and need to be squashed. Good day, Phillip Harvey.
Thank you. And our next letter is from Melissa Conroy.
Hypocrites and criminals. These are the two words to describe you people, along with our commie mayor. Obviously, you know masks don't work. See the pictures of Regina and Rex Scott below. In fact, the masks are detrimental to our children, and yet you continue to force them on the one demographic that COVID isn't an issue for, our children. It is child abuse. If you insist on trying to inject the poison of the experimental jab into our children, there will be a reckoning so great, especially once the true president is revealed. It is coming. We, the people, are patiently waiting for this time to be revealed, and then the reckoning will happen. You have woken the sleeping giants, which are the parents. Melissa Conroy, mother of 2 TUSD children.
Thank you. And next is Dawn Stevenson.
Mask mandates in schools need to end. Choices are the only way to go. You keep doing the same measures, and it is painfully obvious those are not working. Why on earth would you keep attempting the same thing even though it has failed? There are districts with no mandate doing much better at these health measures than this district. You are above nobody. I said it once and I will say it again. You are not God. You have no authority over me or my children. I fear the day you set foot before God to be judged. God never meant for us to be ruled over by any individual. Why does the board, county, and city say about my injury from the mask? This is a lifelong serious medical issue for me now, caused by city and county mask mandates. One of my children is showing the very same signs of this injury. At least one of the members on this board has violated her own mandates, not only in her school board position, but also her county position. I will attach pictures of our very own mayor and supervisor, Rex Scott, violating what they deemed important. Well, that is at least what they tell the public. Of course, the mayor only showed the mask pictures on her Facebook page. I am glad some of the community fixed that in the comments. You are all hypocrites. This was a TUSD event, therefore masks should have been worn at all times, regardless of this not being on social property, on school property. You should lead by the example you portray to the public. All you're saying by doing this is rules for thee, but not for me. You cannot keep telling the public something while turning around and doing as you please. You wanted kids on their lunch breaks, not gathering in large groups, yet here we have the mayor and Rex doing exactly that. Rex has been a strong advocate of wanting to suffocate our kids. If you are so worried about COVID, you know COVID has no time limit. Any of you could have been affected in that short time period of taking a photo. All of you have no business in any political position nor school board role. The board is not here to give us demands for health care. You are here for education purposes. If the punishment is for what you are doing now is being in a mask every waking moment for the rest of your life, that would not be enough. Dr. Ravi, your own employer will not allow medical professionals to give the pros and cons of the vaccine. Their employee threatens them with their job if they voice the possible bad reactions of the COVID vaccine. Please don't respond telling the public this is not true. I work in healthcare and this is very true. I know the employees on a personal level. This is not informed consent. I am sure you have been in the medical profession long enough to know when you are suggesting a vaccine or medication for a patient, you need to give the pros and cons of any medication or vaccine. This vaccine is no different. You should stand up to your employer and tell them how this is wrong. If you don't, you are complying. I know of many people that had a reaction in hours or days after the vaccine with no prior health history issues. These are just the people I can think of off the top of my head right now.
Excuse me,
Heart
Ms.
attack,
Peña.
needing a-
The 3 minutes are up for this comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And the next letter is from Carrie Williams.
For this comment, there are 14 links referenced. You will receive the links tomorrow morning. To whom it may concern, I urge you today to reconsider the TUSD mask mandate. Given the fact that existing scientific literature challenges the safety and efficacy of wearing face masks to prevent COVID-19, it is very responsible to allow students and staff the freedom to choose whether or not to wear masks at school. Given that children and adolescents are at an extremely low risk of developing complications or dying from COVID, the psychological and physiological ramifications of being masked for 7 hours or more a day outweigh any potential benefits. Also, it is evident that children and adolescents do not follow proper guidelines on how to use a mask, which, according to the research, renders them completely ineffective. Also, how can schools specify lunchtime when kids have to take off their masks to eat together? Doesn't that defeat purpose entirely? Instead of enforcing mask mandates that are illogical and not based on science, TUSD should make masks optional at school and continue to allow remote learning options so that at-risk students and staff who would like to study and work from home can do so. Masks provide a false sense of security that end up putting individuals at risk by neglecting actual solutions such as educating students on how to become healthy through diet, exercise, hygiene, and other lifestyle choices. I urge you to examine the preponderance of peer-reviewed literature I have included below that supports the claims I have made in this letter. I live near a school and often see children walking and biking to school completely by themselves, fully masked. Where is the logic in that? These behaviors are evidence that children are being fed propaganda instead of being presented with the facts. If we can't trust TUSD to be honest when it comes to something like whether or not the science says masks prevent infection, why would we trust them with our children's education? It is time for TUSD to be honest with the science and adjust their policies accordingly so our children don't continue to suffer. Sincerely, Carrie Williams.
Thank you. And the next letter is from Jean Papasinski.
Dear board members, at the last board meeting, you and the public were scammed by a slideshow. ACS, Academic Continuation Services, doesn't exist as it was presented. There is no instruction. There are just some general lessons or assignments posted in various content areas. Board members, does it seem plausible that ACS teachers have been hired and are in place when TUVA and many other regular classroom positions remain unfilled? Were the ACS teaching positions ever posted? Will there ever be posted? Or is this imaginary program being staffed by imaginary teachers? Furthermore, leadership posed the ridiculous notion that regular classroom teachers would have to, quote, stop what they are doing in order to provide coursework for absent students. With this statement, leadership appears to be unaware of basic teaching practices and unfamiliar with the modern classroom. Here is some clarifying information for leadership. 1. The issue of absent students in need of coursework and assignments is nothing new. 2. Teachers have daily planning periods so they don't have to, quote, stop what they are doing. 3, in the modern classroom, teachers and students have computers. Assignments and resources should be posted on established district platforms like Clever. 4, for grades 6 through 12, the use of online platforms like Clever to give students access to their coursework should be in place and used regularly, not just for periods of absence. This is common and best practice for college and career preparation. If K-5 students need a different approach, then that should be considered with the input of K-5 teachers. Finally, by promoting and focusing solely on ACS, the district has been negligent in providing the necessary information and guidance to teachers, parents, and students to access the regular classroom assignments and resources in the event of quarantine or other absence. Sincerely, Jean Papasinski.
Thank you. And the next letter is from Lillian Fox.
It is not surprising TUSD has vaccines for school nurses because TUSD pays school nurses It's not surprising TUSD has vacancies for school nurses because TUSD pays school nurses $3,000 less per year than it pays teachers, and that doesn't include the 301 performance pay teachers get. Nurses are paid so much less than teachers because a few years ago, Dr. Sanchez moved nurses to a lower pay scale than teachers. It would cost very little for TUSD to pay school nurses the same salaries as teachers. For its 85 schools, TUSD has only budgeted for 36 school nurses. Including benefits, it would cost TUSD $144,000 to pay all the school nurses the same salaries as teachers. Think about that in the midst of the COVID epidemic. TUSD only budgeted for 36 school nurses for 85 schools and pays them $3,000 less per year than teachers. That's the same number of nurses as TUSD has had for many years. 26 schools have a nurse only 1 day per week. 8 schools have a nurse 1.5 days per week. 12 schools have a nurse 2 days a week. Not even all the high schools have nurses 5 days a week. To work full time, some TUSD school nurses are covering as many as 3, 4, or 5 schools. Part of a school nurse's job is to supervise any health aides. A nurse covering 5 schools is also responsible for 5 health aides. Unlike teachers and other employees, TUSD's job description requires school nurses to have a current driver's license and car insurance on their car. You should ask why. A nurse covering even 3 schools only has time to do the legally required paperwork. They don't have time to provide student health education, and the student health care school nurses should provide. With its understaffed schools, a nurse may not be there when a student has an asthma attack or some other health emergency at school. A few years ago, Channel 9 covered what happened in an A-rated TUSD elementary school when there was a medical emergency without a nurse on campus. The school didn't call an ambulance. Instead, the parent was called to come get their child. When the parent arrived, the child was bleeding and I believe unconscious. Channel 9 reported that TUSD settled the lawsuit for $1 million. Today, that A-rated school still has a nurse only 1.5 days a week. TUSD's understaffed schools are at risk for mishandling medical emergencies. TUSD needs to fix the nurses' pay and increase staffing to protect students and to reduce its financial exposure to more lawsuits. Lillian Fox.
Thank you. Next is Amy Anderson.
I am writing in to let you know that our family completely disagrees with TUSD requiring masks and with the COVID vaccination clinics being offered on campuses. You are still not following the science that the risk of COVID-19 in children is so low that any imagined benefits of masks cannot possibly outweigh the risk. The same goes with the vaccine, which you will soon be pushing on our 5 to 11-year-olds. Based on CDC data, the COVID survival rate of children between the ages of 0 and 14 years of age is 99.9998%. School and daycare transmission studies show that the transmission of COVID-19 among unmasked children is remarkably low. In fact, forcing masks upon our children actually weakens their immune system. Exposure to germs helps build their immune system, and by masking our kids, you are not allowing them to build their immunities. You're also causing them to live in fear of a virus that, once again, they have a 99.9998% chance of surviving. Can you provide any studies that show masks actually stop the virus? Plus, you keep saying it until the majority of students can get vaccinated. So we should get our students the shot that doesn't stop people from contracting it or spreading it. That doesn't make sense either. Let parents, along with their doctors, choose what's right for their children's health, not this one-size-fits-all forced mandate. Plus, why are people, including the mayor of Tucson, asked to attend TUSD events unmasked? Do you see the hypocrisy there? We are so glad we pulled our kids out of TUSD and hope many parents do the same. Amy Anderson.
Thank you. And our last letter is from Theresa Aguilar.
My sons go to Tucson Magnet. They have a hard time with the suffocating mask. No to masks and mandatory vaccines. Stop the insanity. Theresa A.
Thank you. Any comments, board members? Okay. Yeah, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to ask that staff review the recommendations proposed by Mr. Smith. Also, to look into the matter that Ms. Papasinski discussed as well. And also, if we could add to a future agenda item, a study action on our school nurses and health assistants, their pay, how many are at each school, how many days they're there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items? Okay. Thank you. Now we're going to go with the adjusted agenda and go directly to 8.1, Study Action, TUSD COVID-19 Readiness and Response District Update, October 5th through October 26th. Dr. Trujillo.
President Grijalva, board members, tonight's update, we're going to cover three main items. First, we're going to give you a look at the concentric dashboard, and all of you will be provided access to the dashboard so you'll be able to run your own reports at your leisure. And the dashboard is designed to give you a look at testing trends throughout the district at the classroom level through the pool testing that we've been facilitating now. Now we're up to 83 schools that are in online and participating in pool testing. We'll also give you an update on TUVA. We've just kicked off the second quarter. We'll give you an update on the trends that have emerged in terms of movement from students back to in-person and from in-person into TUVA, as well as a general update on staffing. And then we will give you a preview of our planning for the availability of the vaccines that are imminent for the K-5 population and some of the work that's being planned with Pima County. And then the fourth item will be led by our governing board as it engages in a discussion regarding a potential return to live in-person governing board meetings. And of course that is also a part of this item as noted in the public language. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Lenhart that will get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, Governing Board President Grijalva, Board Clerk Shaw, board members, Dr. Trujillo, Mr. Ross, and staff. Tonight, as Dr. Trujillo mentioned, we're going to go through a few slides about what has been happening. We're going to talk about our concentric dashboard, what you will see in it when you get access. I have requested it. We'll talk about the vaccine updates and what's coming, and then TUVA and where we stand with that now that we're into the second quarter. Next slide. So the concentric dashboard, and we'll see a preview of it in just the next slide, is updated daily. Results can be sorted by school or as a district total. As Dr. Trujillo mentioned, we're up to 83 schools. The other 5 schools are being added next week. And then probably the following week we'll add the other, I believe it's 12 locations where staff are in different buildings in our district. The dashboard provides as a total number of tests as well as positive pools by school and as the district as a whole. In the last month, from September 20th through October 20th, we have tested 523 pools, which is 5,380 individual swabs that we've done. From that, we've had 173 antigen test because of a positive pool, and of that, there was 28 positive tests. Next slide. Thank you. So I know this is a little hard to see, and we can zoom in if we need to. But the top part of the dashboard is where you select by school. It gives the information. Now, this is a district view. So by week, the number of pools that we did and the number of positive pools. So as you can see, week over week in comparison, the number of pools that we do each week is much greater than the number of actual positive pools that come back. The middle section is just a graph of where our rates are. The prevalence rate is how, if you were to roll out across the district, how prevalent is COVID within our pools. At this point, our district is at 0.52%. When I spoke to Concentric, on average, nationally for the districts that they support, the average national average is around 4%. So we're fairly low compared to most districts at this point in time. And then the last section is where you can sort by school and see all the details as far as their number of positive, how many pools were done, the number of positives that they had, how many antigen tests we did, number of swabs that we did. So it just provides all the detail. And as I said, you can sort it by individual school or by district and by week or as a total over time. Next slide. Oh, so before I go on to the vaccine updates, was there any questions on the Concentric dashboard?
Any questions, board members? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I was wondering, because the participation numbers are rather low, are we still reaching out to families to try to encourage them to sign up for Concentric?
Yes. So what happens every week is all the schools that are participating, they send a letter letting the entire school community know if they had any positive pools, and then also, or not. So if they did, so that people would be aware, or if there was no positive pools, then they'll say, they have all negative pools this week. Within the letter is also a section encouraging families to continue to sign up with all the appropriate codes, as well as links to the Concentric website if they want to look up more information or see the videos about how the testing is done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Jean, can you go back one slide? Thank you. So vaccine update, just quickly, as we all have heard, the boosters vaccines have been approved for Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J. They are for anyone 65 plus if they're immunocompromised, if they're an emergency worker, or which also includes education workers. So this week, the Pima County sent out a notice saying that they had all boosters available within the community and at Pima County sites. So we sent out a communication to all of our staff actually last night, letting them know how they could find the boosters, all the different locations that they're available so they could schedule their appointment if they'd like to. They're available at CVS, Walgreens, Safeway, and really any local pharmacy, as well as all of the Pima County sites. And then Pima County will be bringing them to any of the clinics that they hold at our schools. Today, the FDA was talking about the approving vaccines or some vaccines for ages 5 through 11. This is expected to then go on to the CDC so that then the approval and distribution of the vaccine would happen in the next few weeks is the expectation. We have been talking to Pima County about the steps that we would need to take to begin to vaccinate our students within our schools. What type of communication are they suggesting? If we have, what kind of scheduling in putting clinics within our schools, and if parent permissions are required, because I know for anyone under 18, they do have specific parent permission forms that are required. So what are those for those younger students? And so we will be working with Pima County to have vaccine clinics within as many of our schools as possible, elementary schools, as well as working with the principals to determine the best time of day to do those. So whether it's during the school day or after school or on a weekend. And the next slide, I believe that was it for my section. Any questions on that?
Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sanchez to talk about TUVA.
All right. Good evening, President Grijalva, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo. Let me begin by just taking a moment to, on behalf of the entire TUVA community, to thank our board for your continued support of this new instructional environment that we have for our students. Your support dating back to last spring, throughout the summer, and most recently this past quarter has really allowed us to build a very strong operational and instructional infrastructure for our students and for our faculty and staff. And we just really want to extend our gratitude to all of you for that as we head into the second quarter. Next slide, please. So we felt as we make a natural transition from one quarter to the next in using this new instructional model that we provide the board an update on trends that occur from our remote learners. As you can see there, as of October 21st, we still have 2,239 students K-12 that are enrolled at TUVA and have begun the second quarter. At the height of the first quarter enrollment for TUVA, we were at 2,400. So you basically can deduce that we had about 167 students who did return back to the in-person learning environment for
And it looks like we lost Mr. Sanchez there. But as you can see, we did have 167 students return to in-person learning. And of course, one of the things that we're going to continue to do is we're going to continue to admit new outside of the district enrollments that can start at any time. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Hewitt, who has been doing a lot of the work with Maxim and has been on the ground with our team filling these vacancies. Mrs. Hewitt.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, board members. And this is just a very quick update. Thanks again for your approval with Maxim. We have been able to place 17 teachers from Maxim, 9 elementary and 8 secondary. So we have also relieved all of the staff that helped with coverage. They are now in their regular duties. So we are almost fully covered at TUVA. Thank you for your support. Any questions?
I have a question. So in looking at the rollout of the vaccine for younger students, once that happens, how are we going to transition those students who want to go back in person? Are we still asking them to wait until the end of the quarter? So because I know that that's what happened with my son. He stayed on line until the quarter, and then we opted to put him in person. And so I'm wondering if that's what would be happening for regardless of which transition, whether students want to move online or vice versa. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. We are going to ask families to hold steady until the Christmas break due to the amount of movement that will probably happen once kids start receiving the vaccine. As all of you know, there are staffing implications in terms of if we see a migration, a large migration back to in-person. We need that time to be able to staff. So we'll be targeting kicking off in January for any families that want to switch environments.
And then just to clarify, those teachers that have been hired through Maxim, if there isn't the necessity for that position anymore because we've had students transition, where are they on a full contract, or how would that impact? Or would we ask them to do some other support if we don't need them in TUVA?
Mrs. Hewitt?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Grijalba. If we don't need them anymore, we simply just cancel that particular contract with those teachers since they are hired permanent.
Okay, thank you. Questions, board members? Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. I think a lot of the quarter and your initial question, from my understanding, is for the young folks, it's still a two-shot series. So they wouldn't be fully vaccinated and immune until probably coming back into the second semester in January. So I think this timing will work well for folks transitioning into the next semester. My one question about kind of where we are in updates, Dr. Trujillo, on the contact tracers. So in early September, I believe we approved, or sometime in September, we approved contract tracers. Not sure what was going to happen with the Pima County ability to continue that. I wanted to know if there was any updates. Do we have our own contract tracing going on now, or what are we at with that?
We're just going to suspend our board meeting until we can resolve the fire alarm. There's a fire alarm going on, so we're going to ascertain whether it is a threat or if it's just kind of some electrical issue, and we'll get back on with an update as soon as we can. Thanks for your patience.
Hi, everyone. I just want to let you know the alarm is going off in Duffy, and they should be coming back in shortly.
There was an alarm that just went off, everyone, and we're just returning to our seats now, so we'll be back on in about 3 minutes. The alarm has been turned off now, and so people will be returning to their seats. Thank you for standing by. Hi, everyone. The alarm has been turned off now, the building alarm, and so people are returning to their seats. So we'll resume the meeting in about 90 seconds. Thank you.
we have Richard there?
Okay, thank you all for your patience. It was a motion detector, and so our facility is very well protected. So now we're back on item 8.1. Dr. Trujillo, we were in mid-presentation.
Yes, picking up where we left off, Dr. Gervoy Shaw had an inquiry as to the status of the contact tracing positions. So I've asked Renee Heuser if you can join us, give us an update on interview and selection, and where we're at in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. President, members of the board, the fire alarm actually gave me an opportunity to go in and look and bring you up to the minute information. We have had about 13 applications for it. Looks like interviewing has begun, and there's actually been a couple of people pushed forward as a recommendation for hire. So those are going through the clearing process right now, looking at background checks and paperwork and so forth. We don't have anybody on staff yet, but it looks like we're very close.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Dr. Trujillo, let's see.
At this point, the administration will move it to the board.
Okay.
I know that there are a board member wishes to make or at least raise the question of considering a return to in-person governing board meetings. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Board Clerk Shaw.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Yes, I feel that, a lot of boards are meeting in person now. I know we've touched base on this several times and decided to do it and then took that decision back. So I would like to bring it to the board again to make a motion that we open up our board meetings.
And so just to be clear, what does that entail to you when we say open it up? Because we're here in person, but if you can just be more specific, like.
Of course, to allow the public to participate, to attend the meetings, to sit and watch the meetings, to read their own letters to the audience, basically just open it up in the classical sense.
Okay. So Ms. Shaw has moved the item.
President Grijalva?
So we have a motion on the floor, and so I have to get a second.
Sure. I'm not sure how I feel about this yet, and I'm looking forward to discussions. I'll second it to facilitate discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Dr. Ravi, go ahead.
I'll wait for, I don't have any comments at this point. I'll wait for others to comment.
Okay.
I'll make.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. I appreciate Ms. Shaw bringing this back to the attention of the board. And I am very much for the democratic process and allowing citizens, we are all citizens, to come and address us as board members. But my only concern is that, well, it's twofold. One, if I would support bringing the public back in person, what does that look like? How controlled is it going to be? Do we have it as before? Do we want to have 200 people in the boardroom? I don't know if I would feel comfortable with that. And even though I am vaccinated and so is my daughter, I know there's several of my colleagues whose children are still too young to be vaccinated at this point. Or are we going to space them out? So I'd like to see some sort of diagram or something. How is that going to look? And number two, if I'm going to support something, I'm only comfortable in doing it perhaps the beginning of 2022 when we come back from Christmas break. I think we only have 2 board meetings between now and our January meeting anyway. And we're getting into the flu season. Flu shots, clinics are going on. Would give parents the opportunity. I know I saw on the news today, right before I came to the board meeting, that the shots are going to be available soon for our kiddos ages 5 to 11. So I'd like to give families that opportunity before we open it back up for the public to come in for call to the audience.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, I am in favor of having the public return. I just think that we have to have some criteria. It obviously has to be reduced capacity. But quite honestly, we're still at a very substantial spread of COVID when it comes to, we're at like between 170 to 150 per 100,000 people, which equates to about 400 cases a week. And so I would rather wait until we get down to a more moderate level when our Pima County Health Department can say, you know, this is a safer kind of environment for us to have it in. And so I understand wanting to have the public in our meetings. I would agree with Ms. Luna Rose that waiting the 2 meetings and having a discussion in January makes sense to me. But we do have a motion and a second. Ms. Shaw, did you want to add something?
Of course.
Sure.
Yes, thank you all for your comments on this. I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I, basically agree that, it's a scary thing, but considering the conditions of our schools, their teachers and students are with many, many people every day of the school week, and they endure that. And so I think we need to model the behavior that is happening already around our district and open up our board meetings. I do agree with Ms. Luna Rose that there should be some mitigation strategies that we can employ so that there's, not 500 people in here. And I think in our previous discussions, those stipulations have already been laid out. And so, yeah, I think it would be good to, all the critics that keep saying you're not even open up, so that is one thing that they can't say about our board any longer. As well as I think it's to hear the public comments by themselves is actually more powerful as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ravi?
Back in July or August, we did discuss this, and our plan was to go back to full in-person meetings with the limited capacity, and we had a plan in place. I'm not sure if that plan is available for us to review, that we were going to institute before Delta became more rampant and case numbers were going up.
Dr. Trujillo?
Yeah, we don't have that queued up for this evening, but in my conversations with the tech team, they are going to need at least a meeting in between. Okay, so whatever the board decides tonight, we're going to have to give our team, our hardworking team, our board operator, our communications team, Miguel, Mary, Jean, everybody, at least give them that meeting in between so they can reconfigure. And then in a subsequent meeting, we would have that opportunity to present to you the new layout. So that just from a logistical standpoint, if the board takes action tonight, we would just request, don't make it live the next meeting, so our team can have that time to work through the logistics.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Dr. Ravi? No? Okay, so we had a second on Ms. Shaw's motion to go back to in-person meetings, and I'm assuming that still stands as soon as possible.
It doesn't have to be as soon as possible. I like what Ms. Luna Rose mentioned about, if there's only 2 more meetings for this year, our first meeting in 2020, that's fine with me.
Okay, so
I'll second that amendment.
Right. No, I think she was just clarifying that that's what she wanted. And so we have a motion and a second to begin our meetings. And when is the first meeting? There's an organizational meeting when?
Yes, I've got the calendar up right now,
Thank you.
and we've got an organizational meeting on, it's going to be January 11th.
Okay, so that's,
It would probably be January 4th, which would be the first Tuesday that we come back.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so it's not yet noted in my calendar. So January 11th is your first regular, January 4th is your organizational meeting where the new officers are elected and
right. And so usually there isn't, because it's a special meeting, there hasn't been called to the audience, if memory serves. But what I would like, if you guys are open to a friendly amendment, to have an item to discuss where we are as a community on January 4th, as far as the spread of COVID and if we've had an opportunity to have the rollouts, just to make sure that we're all still on the same page for the January 11th start. But right now on the table is January 4th or January 11th?
I
For a
think
meeting.
the 11th.
The 11th, the regular meeting. Okay. So we want to go ahead and move on the January 11th meeting?
Yeah, I'd like to
Okay.
add that
so-
amendment.
All right. So we have a motion and a second for starting in-person meetings January 11th. And if we can, in the meantime, Dr. Trujillo, get that information sent out about what the capacity will be for the public in-person meetings, and if we're still going to have a hybrid for staff, because I do think that if we have several staff members that have to physically be here, but the ones that don't, that call in, are we still going to have this sort of hybrid situation so people can continue to do that? But these are just questions I'm asking that I'd like.
well, as Dr. Ravi noted, we'll probably go back to the July layout, and based off of the conversation we're hearing today, do the necessary modifications. I can agendize for our next governing board meeting, which I think is November 9th, I want to say, Tuesday, November 9th. We can at least give you a draft, probably by that time, of what it would start to look like.
Okay, that'd be good. Okay, and if it's not ready by the 9th, I mean, we still have another meeting.
Okay.
We have a meeting in December. I don't think it's a rush. Okay, so can I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
And this is to start our in-person meetings with the community present on January 11th.
Dr. Gravosha,
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose,
Yes,
Ms. Shaw,
Yes.
Ms. Grijalva.
Yes. And Ms. Counts is no longer on the call, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the item passes unanimously 4-0. Okay. Was there anything else on this item, Dr. Trujillo?
That was the only action scheduled for tonight. The other items were just informational.
Okay, so now we're on 9.1, K-12 school counselors, student wellness and community partnership.
Yes, I know several of you have been asking about socio-emotional health and access to student services and mental and behavioral health services in our schools, partnerships that are still going on, and I'd like to welcome our two counseling coordinators are joining us, Vanessa Aguayo and Rebecca Carrier. They've got a really informative presentation that I was really excited about when I saw it, especially the partnerships that we've got going on with Casa de los Niños. I think it's really, really an Intermountain faith, really good points of celebration. Okay, team, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, Ms. Grijalva, ladies and gentlemen of the governing board. It's nice to be here in front of you. My name is Rebecca Carrier. Some of you know I'm one of the coordinators for the school counseling department. And with me tonight is Vanessa Aguayo, the other coordinator of the counseling department. We also have with us Julie Shivananda, our new director of social emotional learning and development, Dan Landers from Arizona Complete Health, along with some of our partners from Intermountain and Casa de los Niños. So today we're going to begin by going through some of our in-district, universal, Tier 1 student wellness processes that we have in place and go into a little more detail about our behavioral health partnerships with the state. Next slide, please.
Good evening. So I would like to share some great work that our counselors have been doing this past summer. A group of our K-12 school counselors created a counseling curriculum, so created counseling lessons for counselors and the teachers so that we can use and incorporate SEL strategies. And so they created a scope and sequence. They created curriculum maps, lessons by quarter with teacher extensions to support the teachers in the classrooms with SEL strategies. And then we also have resources for SEL on our curriculum page. So on our TUSD curriculum page on SharePoint, there is our counseling and SEL curriculum that's available for all our staff in TUSD. So we are very excited for this. Our counselors have been using the curriculum and have had a lot of success with it. So I do invite you board members to look at our curriculum when you get a chance. Now I will hand it over to Dan Landers from Arizona Complete Health. Next slide, please.
Hi, I'm Dan Landers. I work for Arizona Complete Health, and I oversee our initiatives for school-based services. In part of Arizona Complete Health, we operate and oversee the crisis system. And that's when crisis mobile teams go out to members of our community, both children and adults who may be in a mental health crisis. We looked at the number of crisis mobile teams that are going out to children who are school-age children during the school hours and the school day, school year. And here's what we found. So you look at Pima County, we have here in the on the vertical axis there, that's the number of crisis mobile team activations during the school year. And on the horizontal axis, that's the approximate number of schools in each county. And what you had is on this line, this trend told us exactly that a couple of things. One is that there was a lot of crisis mobile teams activations going to schools, especially in Pima, Pinal, Cochise, and Yuma. And that we really need to do something. If we could drive down the crisis mobile team activations by getting ahead of it and putting counselors in schools, we could reduce that overall through our whole system and prevent a lot of these mental health crises for kids. And that we really needed to get out and help with Pima and Yuma especially. So we set about doing that. We created a program. So next slide. So yeah, in 2019, we chose to work and fund Casa de los Niños to develop a pilot program called the Youth Engagement Specialist Program. We partnered with TUSD. So we went before the governing board back on March 26, 2019. And originally that was just with 10 schools to start on April 1st. And now we are in Casa de los Niños and Intermountain are both working in this program. And you have Casa de los Niños, the 69 schools overall across the districts of TUSD, Vail, Sunnyside, charter schools, Amphi, and Flowing Wells. And if you look at last school year, Casa de los Niños from this program that originally started with just that 10 schools had 742 referrals for behavioral services from schools, and including 491 of those referrals were from TUSD so far for last year. So a lot of kids are getting referred and a lot of kids getting help. Next slide, please. And then we also, because of this expansion and how much it was growing and this pilot was being successful and being utilized, we decided to also fund Intermountain, and they also for this YES program. And Intermountain started initially with 25 schools, 16 schools in the TUSD district. They also then would serve schools in on TO Nation, also in Casa Grande, and one school in Yuma. They then had 269 referrals last year from TUSD schools. Next slide. And here's what it looks like. This goes over all these months so far. Started the initial there, 69 referrals in that first month, and then we went into the summer, And then last year, that's that 2019-2020 school year, you can see how the referrals sort of go kind of creep up, and they stayed in the high, kind of high digits there, around 70, high 70s, 80s, 90s there, up to the peak of 131 or 138. Then we had our school shut down in March there of 2020 with COVID, and we were still getting referrals even through COVID. And if you look at last year with the hybrid sort of kids in school, out of school, or just all working from home last year, we still had lots of referrals, and it became a big year last year with this. Now, if we look at just I have the latest data, which isn't included here, but TUSD in August, there was 113 referrals from schools, and in September, 232 referrals from schools. So you've seen this coming year is going to be big. We're going to be way above, so far, we're way above where we were last year. And testament to how this is growing and serving the students. Next slide. So a little bit about the funding streams for this program. So we can serve any child that is referred, regardless of insurance status. We have there's children who are on access. They can be served exactly in this program through either through the funding streams of Arizona Complete Health or Banner, United Healthcare, or the American Indian Health Plan. You can also use the mental health block grant. This would be for any kid that is uninsured, so that's including undocumented students. And underinsured. That would include children who have commercial insurance, but maybe it's very expensive and not very good on their behavioral health coverage. We can use the mental health block grant for that. There's also Jake's Law funding, which is new from our state legislature. It's funding of the last resort. This covers what commercial and the mental health block grant cannot cover. So it's very useful. So really, it's for all kids are now can be covered through this. There's also Pima County right that currently this year has a behavioral health COVID-19 grant section of their COVID-19 response grant. And that grant will cover expenses that behavioral health agencies in their outreach and some of their support, paying for some of their time. So there's lots of funding streams available right now for the behavioral health agencies. And so they're really eager to kind of equate with a lot of the expansion that we've seen. Next slide. And then here's how this shows the growth of each of these quarters from the beginning of when we started this all the way to now. It's just grown and grown each quarter, and the growth of now is continuing this present quarter where we're seeing even more schools and taking part in this. But that's all that I have.
Thank you, Dan. Next slide. So as Dan mentioned, Casa de los Niños and Intermountain are part of the schools part of the agencies that partner with our schools. So here we have all our elementary, K, middle, and high schools that are currently partnered with Casa de los Niños. So we have about 32 schools where Casa provides behavioral school-based services to our sites. And so in our next slide, if you can go to the next slide, please. Intermountain centers, these are all of our schools in elementary, K, and middle and high school who are partnered with Intermountain. There's about 26 schools. We just added a few more, but are not on this list. And so during the pandemic, we did notice that there is a higher need in our mental health and needing support at our sites. And so because of COVID, brought up a lot of different things like grief and just being home for such a long time. Our students are coming in with more mental health needs. And so we are in the process of hopefully partnering up with other agencies so they can support the rest of our schools because we have 30 plus schools that are not partnered with any of our agencies. And Rebecca will go into the next slide with more details about what that looks like.
Thank you. Now, as Vanessa just said, this number here, where it says 55 schools, that is already not true just from when this was submitted because of these growing partnerships. And we are having conversations about extending some MOUs with 2 additional local behavioral health agencies. So So ultimately, we would love to have every site represented and every K-12 student supported and have access to these resources. So the agency, there's a school team. Each school has a team, and part of the team is the what you see here is the clinical supervisor, the engagement specialist, the care coordinator, and also the program directors. And they're on the call with us tonight, and we'll be sharing some information in a few minutes. And then at the site level, and this can vary by site, but of course the student and the parent are the central part of that team. In addition, they meet regularly with the principal, the counselor, possibly teachers of record, social worker. Our MTSS team are involved with that process as well, and sometimes the front office staff. We try to, it's an attempt to really wrap around the student and provide those services, both bring those outside services inside of school to support our students. Next slide, please. So what you'll see here are just some of the services that Intermountain and CASA are currently bringing to our schools. So they provide the intake and assessment and coordinate the care and make that determination as to what else is needed. So some of these, the classroom-based interventions, the group and individual counseling, some direct support services, those are provided at the site. Often the coordinators, the counselors from the agencies come out to the site weekly or bi-weekly to support the students. Some of these other services you see are more done at the agency and with the entire family. Next slide, please. We also have a partnership with University of Arizona and their Talk It Out counseling services, and they are master's degree counseling students that provide services at no cost to TUSD students and families as well. Next slide, please. So before we wrap up our presentation, we'd like to give our representatives from CASA. We have Odessa Hancock on the call with us, and then also Susan Stothheim from Intermountain. They're both on the call with us, so they both have a quick addition. Odessa, why don't you go ahead?
Yes, good afternoon. Just wanted to share a brief testimony in which one of our youth engagement specialists was touched by a teenager that was struggling with depression during the time that we were utilizing telehealth. The youth engagement specialist was able to notice some changes in the member's behavior. And with that, he probed some more questions, and the member felt safe enough to express that he was feeling suicidal, but didn't want to say it out loud, so he wrote it in a chat box. During that time, our youth engagement specialist was able to take the right steps to continue to engage the member, to keep him safe, inform the family of what was happening, and then also support them to get the member into the crisis response center. After being admitted, the member was able to then get the necessary support emotionally through Casa de los Niños with the individual therapy and continual care coordination through our high needs support team. Daniel concluded wanted to let everyone know that the member did develop new coping skills. He was able to attend additional support groups, and he is continuing with individual therapy. He said that moment really touched him, because after that, the member was able to come back and let him know that he appreciated him listening to him, and that may have saved his life. So those are the kind of moments, and we're so excited to be able to do that work as CASA to support the students.
Thank you, Odessa. Suzanne?
Hi, thank you for inviting us. We've seen a lot of really good successes, and one that stood out to us was a 10-year-old student was struggling with a lot of verbal and physical aggression against their peers at school, some of that due to a recent death of a close family member. And so we started at the end of last school year providing services on site to the student, individual and group counseling. We enrolled them in our group counseling over the summer, which was a evidence-based trauma group. And we continued that through the summer and then saw them this fall, and we're continuing to meet with them. One of the great things is that the teacher actually told us that they haven't seen any of the negative interactions with peers. So they haven't seen any of the verbal or physical aggression since the fall. And that the mom reported to us that at home things have gotten much better as well, that the interactions with the siblings, with her have improved, that the student is open and able to express how they're feeling and can even tell us what skills they're able to use when they start to get frustrated. So they're able to kind of pause before they react, take some deep breaths, they do some counting skills. So they've really been able to use the supports that they've been provided. And I think that that has helped their communication with their friends, with their teachers, and at home as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. So that concludes our presentation on our student wellness and behavioral health. Are there questions?
Rebecca, real quick, I just wanted to add one thing that wasn't on the presentation that we wanted to also highlight is something that the board has also heard about, but we are also collaborating with our EDI department and our counselors have been very crucial and integral in getting the word out for our TUSD Connect app and utilizing the Talkspace as well. So our purpose behind all of these partnerships is to really reduce the barriers to social, emotional, mental, and behavioral health support, which is why it's crucial and so beneficial that agencies such as CASA and Intermountain are able to come on campus to support students. And then especially for those schools that are not quite partnered up yet, one of those options that we're also working with counselors to support students with is to get access to the Talkspace with Talkspace and Palo Verde Behavioral Health through the Tucson Connect app. So that's just one other partnership we wanted to quickly highlight. Thanks for letting me jump in.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you, all of you, for the presentation. This is a really good overview of a lot of options available for our students and families here in TUSD. I have two questions. One's on how services are being rendered. Are they mostly done virtually to telepsychiatry, psychology services? Are they done in person at the campus for Intermountain or Casa Lolinos, or on campus and our TUSD schools? And the second question is on, you had a slide on payment for services, and so for those with access, there's no issues with REBA or any kind of other kind of payment issues where they're able to bill access without a referral or any kind of problems there. And then you mentioned the mental health block grants, so that's taking care of copays and deductibles for our students with the high deductible plans and private insurance. So those are three questions that call all into one. Here, and I can.
So, Chris, yeah. I was going to say Dan can probably answer more of your questions regarding the funding, and then Odessa and Suzanne can address the intake process and the actual facilitation of services.
We are currently offering hybrid services for therapeutic services and the skill support services. Virtually, we are offering intake, but we are also offering the opportunities for our support team to help families navigate the intake, potentially at the school site if that's what they need.
So for Intermountain, we are providing intakes at the school site in person unless requested otherwise by the family. So we really try to meet them where they're at. And then all of our services, we are typically on the school site one time per week, providing face-to-face services, and then continuing face-to-face at our clinic during holidays or summer. so we can continue those services. If the family requests virtual services or if they are virtual students, then we will provide the service as requested, but we encourage most face-to-face. I can say, and I think Dan will go a little bit more into detail, we do use the mental health block grant as well as Jake's Law to fund students that have private or don't have insurance for services.
Yeah, and regarding your funding questions, one, yes, with your child is on Access, it's seamless to it's very easy and seamless for the providers to use to fund the Access health plans. All behavioral health, and it's quite an extensive behavioral health benefit there. The mental health block grant and Jake's Law can pay for deductibles, can pay for co-pays, and other services that with mental health block grant for anyone who's uninsured or underinsured. So underinsured divided by Access is if their benefit of what their commercial plan does not meet the parity of the Medicaid benefit, or if there is significant delays in receiving those services. So, for instance, if the commercial plan says that the appointment has to be, you can only get the appointment with the in-network specialist within, say, it's a month or 30 days out, but one of the providers, Intermountain or Casa de los Niños, could bridge that and have weekly and other services between that commercial appointment and fund it through the mental health block grant. Does that kind of answer your question, or is there another piece there?
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. And thank you, Mrs. Carrier and team. It was a great presentation, and I'm really excited that we have these services for students and their families. I just had a quick question about the Talk It Out counseling services. Do we know, I don't need an exact number, but like a ballpark of how many have utilized that service?
I don't know that we do. It's very varied depending on their capacity. Honestly, they have a wait list right now. So depending on the students they have available and the capacity, it really varies. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation and all the information. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Trujillo, 8.3, Budgetary Support Plan and Proposal for TUSD Operations and Exterior Maintenance Needs for school year 21-22 and school year 22-23.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome our Director for Facilities, Mr. Greg Meyer. Grounds have been a big focus for us. I think all of you have spoken publicly about a desire to see better response times for grounds for schools, especially with regard to curb appeal and exterior maintenance. And I'm very proud of the work that our Director for Facilities has done since starting this job. He has been active. He has been visiting schools. I think he's almost hit 50 schools that he's actually personally walked to assess the situation. And tonight he's put together a comprehensive set of recommendations and a vision for how grounds services should be facilitated in the district. And I'd like to welcome him so we can get started. Mr. Greg Meyer. I think you're muted.
And here we go.
There you are.
Hey, now I think I'm back. Good evening, President Grijalva, Clerk Shaw, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo, and Council Mr. Ross. So before I begin tonight, I would like to give you a little background information. And just to let you know that I have been employed by Tucson Unified for 4.5 months. And during that time, yes, I have been going out to the schools. And I added a few more schools to my total today. So I'm actually up to 52 schools that I've been visiting. And I have about 36 more to go. So it's a lot of schools, but I will eventually get there to see them all. So I can tell you that I've been talking with the principals, the office staff, the custodians, our grounds crew, if they're available when I go out to the sites. And I'm listening to their comments. I'm making notes. And I'm also doing my own evaluations of everything that I see at the schools when I'm there. So I would have to say that every single school that I've been in, they have their own unique personality, and especially the historic schools in our district. When you walk in the schools, I mean, you're just surrounded by history. And it's just amazing. And, you know, with the terrazzo floors and the oak woodwork and so forth in the schools, they don't build schools like that anymore. And so it's such a tremendous feeling to be a part of this. And so I have to say that our job in the facilities department is to make sure that our schools put their best foot forward in terms of curb appeal on the outside of the building, but there's also curb appeal on the inside of the building as well. And as a facility department, we just have to ensure that we have the proper resources available to get our jobs done. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and we will begin the presentation. And so we'll do the first slide. Okay, so the first slide here is the introduction to the grounds department. Then we're going to talk about phase 1, which is getting the basics under control. Phase 2 is improving the landscaping at our sites. And phase 3 is site beautification, the things that we can do to draw attention to our sites. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, so on the overview of the grounds, through the direction of our superintendent, we put together a cross-functional team in facilities to identify and implement sustainable approaches for maintaining our district campuses. And currently right now our facilities ground team is severely understaffed. I think you all know that. We're budgeted for 21 positions and only 12 of those positions are now filled. Over on the building equipment operator side, these are the folks that drive the large trucks for us and do a lot of our tree trimming. We have 6 positions budgeted, and we only have 2 operators in those positions. In fact, one of those positions has been open for more than a year. So it's a very big challenge for us to try to fill these positions. We've been trying very hard to do so, but we just haven't had anybody applying for the jobs on the most part. So it's been a big challenge, but we will continue to work with HR until we can get these positions filled. So right now, in order to keep our heads above water, we have contracted with a supplemental landscape contractor to help assist us with the upkeep of our campuses and the many acres of ground that we have behind the schools. So anyway, our cross-functional team has developed a 3-phase approach to address all of our immediate needs that we have and to also determine a longer range strategy for our campuses in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's our timeline. For phase 1, we want to do a 10-day mowing schedule, and we want to have that in place by March of 2022, as well as a tree trimming schedule as well. After that, then we'll have ongoing assessments of these schedules to see if they need to be adjusted. Phase 2, we're going to begin landscaping evaluations in January of 2022. And due to the large number of schools that we have, this will be an ongoing project throughout FY 22-23 and FY 23-24. So then finally over here in phase 3, we want to begin our site beautification evaluations along the same timeline that we've developed for phase 2, because we think that we can definitely run them concurrently. Next slide, please. Okay, so in phase 1 then, we call this getting our basics under control. So what we need to do here is make sure that all the mowing and required trimming of our fence lines is completed on a 10-day cycle. So that means every 10 days, the grounds crew is going to be on site. Now that's all kind of dependent on the weather. If we have to be at a school on a Wednesday and it's raining, we probably won't be there. So it's going to be a little bit fluid that way, but that's the plan. 10-day, and we're going to call that a service level agreement, an SLA. So right now, the external landscaping contractor is supplementing our department by servicing 15 elementary, K-8, and middle school campuses. And they are responsible for mowing the large acreages on the back end of our schools, weed eating around the fences, and trimming the trees in those areas up to 12 feet. So the curbside up in front of the schools is still the responsibility of our own facilities crews. Then the rest of the middle schools, K-8s and elementaries, will continue to be serviced by our own facility grounds department. The high schools are maintained by their own sites at the present time, and so we're not focusing on them at this point. So again, we're working directly with HR to try to fill these vacancies as soon as we can, and there will be ongoing assessments made of our 10-day SLA to determine if we need any kind of additional supplemental services in order to maintain that commitment. Next slide, please. Okay, so in phase 2 then, we're improving the landscaping of our sites. So what we want to do here is to perform in-depth evaluations of the landscaping at all of our school sites to definitely identify the needs that they have. So what we intend to do with this one here is we want to, well, first of all, with as many schools as we have, of course, we can't do all these evaluations at one time. So what we intend to do is to focus on our declining enrollment schools first, because we think that makes sense, because we want to try to do everything we can, at least from an operations standpoint, to put their best feet forward as far as drawing attention to their schools and hopefully improving their enrollment. So we're going to go after those schools first. The rest of the schools will follow behind. So that will include an evaluation of the front entrance curbside appeal. There will also be things that we're going to look at in terms of the plants, the trees, how about the hedges, and also desert landscape is another thing that we want to definitely look at as far as what we can do to improve the landscaping. So then the intent here is to contact the principals of the schools to have them assemble, I guess you could say, an evaluation team. So that could be members of their own staff, maybe PTO members. We'll leave that up to them as who they would like to have involved in the process, and as well as our own grounds foreman. The grounds foreman will be involved in this process as well. And once that is complete, then we will develop an action plan with specific tasks that have to be completed and target dates for completion. So one thing that we should note here is that we fully intend to engage the U of A, the Architectural Landscape Department, for assistance here, because I think a lot of the classes require the students to do projects, and what a great way for them to get their hands on a great project is to come to Tucson Unified and help us with this whole process. So it's a big win for the U of A, and it's a big win for Tucson Unified as well. Okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, so phase 3, this is site beautification. And what we're doing here is we want to draw attention to our sites. So you can see some of the things that we've identified here as potentials. The marquees, maybe they need some work. They have to be replaced or maybe updated, whatever the case would be. The gardens maybe out in front. Metal artwork or murals. I saw a really nice mural today when I was out at one of the schools on the front. This is all really good stuff. The playgrounds, the shade structures, and outdoor learning spaces. These are things that we can definitely do to try to draw attention to our sites. Next slide, please. Okay, so in regard to the resources required, our ask for this fiscal year, 21-22, is as follows. Over on the roving grounds crew, the small equipment category, the ask here is for $4,140. Over on the roving grounds large equipment side of the ledger, we're asking for $100,000 there. On the K-8 and middle school, the ask here is for $69,075. And over on the high school side, the ask is for $257,895. So a couple things that I need to point out on this slide is, first of all, this equipment is commercial grade equipment that we're talking about here, because we want to have the best possible equipment in our employees' hands that we can get. And so it's all going to be commercial equipment on that side of it. I also want to draw your attention to the 72-inch Toro mowers at the high schools. At the present time, we are barely able to keep these mowers running. They're old, they're shot. I mean, they've just had it. The mower at Sabino went down on us, and I couldn't even give them another mower. And so that's not okay, and this is one area that we really need to focus on and improve. So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. And also, this is a sizable investment that we're making here. So what we intend to do is the following. We will make sure that our operators, grounds operators in the high schools and the middle schools are trained properly in regard to the proper functioning of the equipment that they're going to be running. And we will also ensure that an annual inspection is completed on the equipment to ensure that the equipment is not being abused. And that evaluation will be done by our mechanic in the grounds maintenance department. And the results of those inspections will be forwarded to the principal and to the assistant superintendents for their review. So it's important that we're accountable, that we take care of the assets that we're afforded to work with, and so there will be accountability with this. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so under our resources required here under the personnel side, we're requesting a grounds foreman, and this particular foreman, the requirements there, some of the requirements will be that this individual will supervise a number of our crews that we have out in the school sites, be responsible for ensuring that the SLA of the 10 days is met and maintained. They'll be doing quality checks on all the schools that they're assigned to make sure that the mowing is done correctly, the trimming is done correctly, the trees are in good shape, and so that we have everything exactly how we need to have it look. And the final thing, or another big item here for this particular individual, will be to be heavily involved in the landscape evaluations that will be done on every single one of our schools. So next slide, please. So then when we talk about resources required for fiscal year 22-23, the capital here on the high school equipment side, the ask is for $124,515. Over in the grounds, roving grounds department, large equipment, the ask is for $305,000. So again, this is all commercial grade equipment that we're looking at, and the request here is for $429,515. Next slide. Okay, under our personnel resources that we're requesting, for 22-23, we're looking at an additional 5 grounds workers. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that we can accomplish the 10-day SLA by ourselves. We don't want to rely on supplemental contractors in order to do this work. We want it all internal, and we want to use our own people. So the additional 5 FTEs will definitely put us in a position where we can handle this endeavor ourselves. And then, of course, the grounds foreman would be an ongoing request there. So then we're looking at this phase here at $236,520.55. Next slide, please. So when we take a look at the total request here, not to exceed for FY 21-22, the total there is $487,123. For FY 22-23, the request is for $666,036. So in conclusion, I just would definitely like to thank the facilities department that came together across the many different departments to put this plan together. I think they did a really nice job. I'd also like to thank Blaine Young and Tracy Winfield for all of their help to put this together for us. And last but not least, I would certainly like to recognize our grounds crew. They have done a tremendous job considering all the challenges that they had to overcome. And I'm just really pleased with their effort, and I'm very proud of every single one of them. And so I definitely want to thank them. And with that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the presentation. And I have bothered pretty much every superintendent I've worked with, including Dr. Trujillo, about the appearance of our schools because, our parents have an option and they can walk around and look at facilities that are newer and maybe have, faster Wi-Fi. But I'm glad that you, in visiting the campuses that you visited, can appreciate that every community is unique and that they each have something really special to offer. And it's so important for us to highlight and showcase what's going on in the school by the outside of it being welcoming as opposed to a distraction. Like a lot of our parents would say, I went and visited this school and I loved everything, but can you all paint it or can you trim it or can you, put a little bed of roses or something. And I understand, I also, when you're looking at the kinds of landscaping, to be really mindful of, those that are not going to be, that are more cactus and not utilizing so much water because we're in a major drought. So, but I do appreciate everything that you said, and it's nice to hear from somebody that hasn't grown up around all of these schools that we have some really wonderful things going on there. And I'm sure that the staff members that have been putting in the work with equipment that it's kind of amazing that they've been able to do what they're doing. I appreciate you acknowledging them too. Questions? Dr. Ravi and then Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you, Mr. Meyer and the team for putting together this presentation. And I'm really happy to hear that there is a lot of thought going into just how to get our campuses, as Ms. Grijalva said, really on par with the best here in the region. I appreciate the request on page 12, and just want to see what the strategy is behind some of the position issues that we're having. So I see about $850,000 in capital requests over 2 years, as well as 6 positions. And I understand from your previous slide that 9 out of 21 positions are currently unfilled. If we had this presentation a year from now, what is the strategy in place so that we don't have 15 out of 27 positions unfilled, or even more? And what is the strategy? I'm just concerned and convince me that we're not putting the cart before the horse in terms of what we're spending our time and energy on, as opposed to getting these positions filled first and then making sure we have the equipment for them.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I thank you for bringing that up. And so, again, I think that I have to be honest about it. I think that our wages really need to be looked at for an entry level grounds person. We hire at $13 an hour. And so I think we really need to look at that. I think if we can work on that, and I think if we can improve that hourly rate, I think that we're going to have a lot more interest. I really do. And over there on the equipment side, the range is, I've got that here somewhere. Let's see, where did I put that? I think the range right now for an equipment operator is $14.36 to $16.67. So I think that we're deficient in that area as well, to be honest about it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if we can work on the wage situation here, and if we can bump that up some more, I think that we're going to have a lot more interest. But right now, I just don't see the applications coming in, and it is definitely a matter of concern. And I appreciate your question in regard to this. And but I think that this is something that if we focus on and we work together as a team to get those wages, I think, where they need to be, I'm confident that we can get the people. I really am.
And Mr. Meyer, can you address the question about the purchase of the equipment when we may not have the staff? Right? Was that part of your question, Dr. Ravi?
As all this goes together, I think I love this plan. I'm glad we have this plan, but I'm not sure I'm ready. I'd love to hear more from the other governing board members. Whether we're ready for implementing this plan and having more positions open and more equipment to be used by folks we don't have. And I think Dr. Trujillo wanted to respond.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, I also want to be very careful here, and it's by design that we did not include a discussion on wages because that's a negotiations issue. Mm-hmm. And we're very sensitive to that. And I want to thank Mr. Meyer for his candor because it's going to be part of our strategy. We do want that to be addressed. However, we want that opportunity with AFSCME, to talk with them. They do represent our custodians and make sure that they're not caught off guard before we bring a wage proposal. I think it leads to a larger discussion that we've all been having about direct competition with the private sector. I think that's definitely something that's a challenge. So that's why we're not really here with a comprehensive wage package. And it probably puts you in a tougher spot, because it's either, I'll say this, we're either going to end up filling these positions, or you can always go to our fallback, which is right now Brightview, which is our industrial vendor for exterior maintenance services. They're here now. They'll be here in a year. We'll be spending the same money. I echo the commitment that Mr. Meyer said earlier. We believe that neighborhood and community jobs belong in our community. They belong here in TUSD. We don't want to continue to have to pay for a contracted vendor. So that's the goal. But we always know that that's the safety net if we're not able to get these positions. But I do agree with Greg that I think if we can work on the wages, we might see a better payoff in terms of filling these positions. And I think equipment has a lot to do with it as well. I'm not going to name the schools, but I shared with Mr. Meyer, I visited a middle school last week, and the custodian showed me a weed eater that only functions for 15 minutes, and it starts to smoke. And he has to stop, and it has to cool off, and then he has to continue on. And I think that also is a blow to morale, like when you're not given the equipment that you need to keep clean and safe spaces for kids. So I think on the equipment end of this, we're going to be doing wonders for the existing staff, particularly when you look at the K-8 and you look at the elementary purchases that we're going to make, that we're going to be funneling into the schools. I think that is probably one of the more vital pieces of this package, that if anything else, the governing board, if it elects to take a little bit more time to look at the staffing end of it, I think the existing needs in terms of the equipment that needs to get into the hands of our existing grounds and custodians, I would appreciate the board at least prioritizing that into the package.
And I just want to chime in that the equipment needs to be, we need to make that purchase, in my opinion. We do have staff that are out there. And so while we have, we're talking about the grounds people that are out there right now and in our high schools and what they need. Those positions they're people that are working there with substandard equipment. Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. And thank you, Mr. Meyer, for your presentation. And I have to say I'm very impressed with your 52 schools in 4.5 months. So appreciate the commitment. I guess it's sort of a two-parter. Number one is just more of a general statement. The look of our schools is it's part of a public relations package. Somebody's driving by or Rincon, Tucson High, Palo Verde, and they're trying to see, well, maybe, we've got UHS housed at Rincon. Well, if the grounds aren't looking great, does a parent that wants to come from another district send their child there? And it's a perception issue, and it could be the greatest school on earth, but if we don't have the means to help our groundskeepers and our ground staff, but their morale happy and ready to work, then shame on us for not stepping up. And then my second question, that's more a comment. My question, though, and Dr. Trujillo, you did allude that it's more of a wage issue. For that, and as a sensitive issue, can we get a breakdown of what other districts are paying?
Yeah.
And then the breakdown also of the privatization factor?
Yeah, absolutely.
As well?
I think that, that's the kind of stuff that I think we can start looking at. I could tell you that it's mostly going to be with private sector. For example, our vendor right now, it's very difficult for our in-house grounds to run into the Brightview grounds employees that come and work on our campuses, and they're bumping into these Brightview employees that make several dollars more an hour to clean the same campuses that they're short-staffed to maintain. And it's difficult. So I think you're going to see when we provide that information that the majority of the challenge is going to be competing with the private sector, as well as our sister districts, which by and large pay around the same. But it's definitely a larger conversation with AFSCME. We want them at the table when we're talking about these issues. And definitely before we bring any kind of a formal proposal.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. I just wanted to piggyback on Ms. Luna Rose's comment about getting that information about the wages throughout other districts and the city. If we could also include Brightview on that and how much we pay them for that contracted work. Thank you.
And so this is a budget request, and we are asking for action. So do I have a motion to, we're approving the request for fiscal year ending 22 and 23. I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Meyer.
And thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now our item 8.2 is TUSD transportation update October 5th through October 26th. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, for our biweekly transportation update, we'll turn it over to our director, Martha Zamora. Welcome, Mrs. Zamora.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Trujillo, President Grijalva, members of the board. I'm here with an ongoing update on the status of the Department of Transportation. Next page, please. Thank you. So our agenda today includes driver capacity, students served, and hubs and routes. Next, please. So I'm happy to announce, since the last time I presented, we have an additional certified driver on the road. And as of today, including 4 new driver trainees that started this Monday, we have a total of 21 driver trainees in our training program. So that's very exciting. Good. Out of those 21, we have 10 that are in their last stage, which means that any given day here, we're going to have them on the road. I just wanted to make you aware that we attended an in-person classified job fair at TUSD. So we were able to see some in-person applicants that were wanting to be drivers. That brought in about 10 people that were interested. So we're happy to see them eventually through our pipeline. Next page, please. As far as hubs and routes, we've removed a few hub stops with feedback from our drivers, letting us know that no students were using it. We've also added a few stops with feedbacks from our schools. So they've already been incorporated. Next page, please. And here is a count of our students that are routed. We look forward to being able to incorporate new routes as new drivers come in here in the next few weeks. Next page. And that concludes the presentation. If you guys have any questions.
Questions, board members? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva, and thank you, Ms. Zamora, for the presentation. I was wondering if we have utilized yet, or if we're pursuing the Uber contract anymore.
We have been working with a few of our contractors, so we definitely have students that are contracted out. I can provide at the next presentation which contracted services if you would like, but we definitely have quite a few of them that we're working with.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. Oh, Dr. Ravi, go ahead.
Thank you, President Grijalva. My questions are about the contracted companies as well. I understand part of our problems going into this school year was because they weren't able to supply the drivers that we needed. Have they met some more of their obligations? And was there any penalties for them not meeting their obligations in the contracts? Or how's that going with our contracted companies? And that could be maybe part of Ms. Zamora's presentation next time, or of any information you have tonight.
I think absolutely. I can make it part of the next presentation. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Trujillo.
Exactly what you're saying, Martha. Take it away.
So I'll go ahead and present it at the next meeting, letting you know by vendor what we have contracted out and some of the challenges that we've had with them, and which vendors have been able to provide the services.
Okay, any additional questions?
One more question.
Yes, Ms. Shaw, go
Thank
ahead.
you. I was just curious and just wanted to make sure that these contracted drivers, that they're undergoing the same like fingerprint background check that our bus drivers have to go through.
Good question.
Yes, that's part of our contract that they do have to be fingerprinted and they have clearance before they can serve our students.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Any additional? And this was just an information item, correct, Dr. Trujillo?
Correct.
Okay, so now we're going back on our regular agenda to the consent agenda. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, I'm recommending the governing board's consideration and approval of the consent agenda as arranged from item 6.2 through item 6.12.
Okay, board members, can I have a motion? All right, and can I have a
I'll
second?
second.
So Dr. Ravi moved the item and Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes 4-0. Okay, item 7.1, this is the second amendment to the agreement with TK Development for the purchase of the vacant Tucson Unified Parcel located southwest of Bonanza Avenue and Watson Drive with authorization for Operations Program Manager to execute the agreement. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to welcome Mr. Nodine, who is our point person on this proposed purchase. And the governing board, of course, has had an opportunity to receive guidance and additional information in exec. And take it away, Mr. Nodine.
President Grijalva, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo and council, this is a request from TK Development for us to reduce the sales price by $60,000 from $435,000 to $375,000. Basically, the request is due to an unanticipated condition added right at the end of the rezoning process. And that condition was added to reduce the elevation of the site so that it's no more than 2 feet higher than the adjacent residential properties. The buyer received 2 bids on the excavation and the haul, and they ranged from, it's going to be approximately $600,000, and that's essentially $13,000 for each of the additional lots. Now, not all of that is due to the final condition, and so our focus when we were looking at what was fair was to just look at that final condition that basically said bring it down another 2.5 feet. Some things to consider is the site started out with a lot of fill on it. Some of the piles as high as 13 feet above the street grade. So there's quite a bit of dirt coming out of it. As I said, it's over $600,000. Being aware of the site and its relationship to the neighbors, the buyer really has the bulk of the responsibility for the cost to export the fill. After meeting with the neighbors, the buyer, TK Development, agreed to export fill off the site to reduce the elevation difference to no more than 4.5 feet. And I read the transcript. That seemed to satisfy the bulk of the neighbors. But then at the final examiner's hearing, an additional condition was added to bring the elevation down another basically 2.5 feet to no more than 2 feet above the neighbors. The cost of that additional condition, the 2.5 feet of fill export, is about $340,000. So considering just the cost of that additional final condition, the proposed reduction that you see before you, which is $60,000, is consistent with each party sharing the additional export costs in proportion to their expected profit on the site. And so that was a little bit of figuring, but basically our percentage of the profit, of everybody's profit, is probably about 20%, and that's why we're looking at 60,000 or so in terms of reduction, and that's to be fair. And I want to point out that even with the reduction in the price, the buyer's offer is still 195,000 more than the closest offer that we received. And although I think there's some problems with the appraisal, it's about $165,000 above the appraised value of the site. So that's some information for your consideration.
Okay. And can you remind us the size of this parcel? How many
This one's about
acres?
10 acres. It's a long, narrow, was supposed to be an elementary school site on the southeast side.
Okay. Thank you. Board members, questions? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. And then surrounding this property, Mr. Nodine, there's a neighborhood to one side, but is it like just raw land on other sides of this property, or is it completely surrounded by?
It's completely surrounded by development.
Okay.
And fairly close to fairly tight to the development in terms of, the distance. There's some buffer on the north and south where it abuts the two developments on either side.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I have some issue with the developer asking for a reduced price because of these unforeseen costs, because, if you're developing an undeveloped lot, then of course there's going to be some things that are unforeseen, and I think they still stand to make a tremendous profit on these 49 lots, and so the $60,000 I think could be better put to use in our district, in our schools.
Any other comments? Ms. Linaros.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Shaw that I don't particularly care for the fact that they want to reduce it. That should be on their shoulders as the developer and not the district's. So I don't know if that could be remedied in any way, because I know this is an action item, but I just wanted to make a comment on my displeasure of that.
So, Mr. Nodine, should this item not pass, or we don't have a motion and a second to consider, will you just go back to TK and tell them that see where they want to go from there?
That's exactly what I'll do. I'll just let them know that it wasn't approved. And do they want to continue on the project? I frankly think they will, because of their substantial investment so far.
Okay.
I was just trying to look at something that seemed relatively fair.
No, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your explanation. But I don't see a motion on the board to move it forward. Unless I'm misreading. Yeah. So if you could go back to TK and bring it back either in executive session, if there's any other update.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nodine.
Yep.
Okay, so item 7.1 had no action. 7.2, consideration of appointment of a new member to serve on the TUSD Employee Benefits Trust EBT Committee.
Yes.
Dr. Trujillo.
President Grijalva, we have a new prospective appointment tonight being forwarded by the Employee Benefits Trust Board for consideration. Lauren Shedd, we've got the application for review by governing board. It's been attached as part of your materials for the evening. And I'm not sure if we have Mark Mansfeld. He usually is online when we are making recommendations for new membership. I don't see him.
Mr. Mansfeld is not with us this
then
evening.
I will turn it over to you, Director Renee Heuser.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board. We've had a vacant seat on our Employee Benefits Trust Board for some time now, and tonight we're very excited to bring forward a recommendation to fill that vacancy. As Dr. Trujillo mentioned, our candidate is Ms. Lauren Shett. She's a Tucson native who's eager to give back to this community that she calls home. She would bring to us over 13 years of auditing knowledge and experience. And her application has been forwarded to you tonight as a recommendation from our current trust board members. They've reviewed it and would like to ask you to please push her through as a board member for a 3-year term, and that would commence with our December meeting.
And so it's December. Can you identify the period of the appointment?
Yes, it would be from December 6th, 2021 through December 6th of 2024. With an option at that point to continue with the governing board's approval.
Okay, and this is a volunteer position board. Do I have a motion or any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
And I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously.